Alright, how's it going everyone? Today we're going over the beginner's PC parts for overclocking. For overclocking, doing anything with hardwarebot.org, could be from your CPU, video graphics card, your memory, uh, SSDs, all kinds of things that can go on to hardwarebot.org. Anything that goes into a PC can basically be overclocked and be put against other people that have overclocked and done the same to the same CPUs, to the same parts. Alright, so today we'll be going over cheap, basic beginner parts that I think everyone should be getting, as they are a great platform for beginners and they don't cost a whole lot. Alright, as you can see here in front, we have a motherboard, we got some RAM in it, we got a CPU in it, we got our SATA cable, everything basically, it's all pretty basic. So the platform that I like to get people into is LGA 1366, which is an older platform that uses Xeons and also their i7 900 series and those kind of CPUs, and they're not too expensive. Kind of like these ones over here, which are the Xeon X5570s. You can pick these up for about $15 a piece or $20 for two. All depends. I used to sell these ones before, but I stopped selling them just because I want to do more tests on them, because there's different kind of like steppings and all that too. So again, the great platform I like to go with is LGA 1366. Here's another board of an LGA 1366. This is an Asus one. This is their P6X 58DE. It's a really, really good motherboard. You can get extreme overclocks on it. It's made for extreme overclocking. You can go past the voltages, past any kind of motherboard, onto the memory, onto the CPU, onto everything. It is great. Um, this board here I have multiple of, because they are also another great board to be overclocking on, as they are a reliable board. I have never had an issue with this board yet. This is a Intel DX58SO. You can find these fairly cheap. They also make the Extreme 2 version of this, which is kind of nice too. Yeah, they got the black PCB. You can pick these up for about $100 for the motherboard, which isn't too bad as well. RAM, you're just going to want to find yourself some cheap DDR3 RAM. If you're going to be stepping it up, going DDR4 right off the bat, which is not preferred in my opinion, it's going to cost you a bit more. The RAM costs you a bit more, and yeah, in my opinion, DDR3 is the best way to go for beginners. And these boards too these older platforms, you can still game on them if you want to have like an overclocked gaming station or that too. You can game on these too. So you get yourself some cheap RAM, whatever you can get really. 2x2 gigs is fine. 2x4 gigs is fine. You can get 4x4. You get 4x2 if you want. All depends on what you want. DDR3 comes in many varieties as well. If you can look for some Samsung C-Die, I believe, Samsung C-Die or B-Die, they're great for overclocking for beginners as well. So we got the motherboard, the CPUs, the LGA platform. You're gonna have to search it up. There is a lot that go into these boards. i7 920, i7 930, i7 950. I could show. I got a couple over here. So like this one here, which is an i7 930. And we got an i7 920. A bunch of Xeons, like I said, the X5570s are a 4-core 8-thread, and you can overclock them quite well. And they're not all the same too for CPUs, so you might be able to overclock one a bit more. So that's why the cheaper alternatives are a bit better. X50, another one is an X5650, which is a 6-core 12-thread, another great CPU to overclock. So we're gonna go into the graphics card. What I like to use is NVIDIA's GT240s or any kind of graphics card that does not need external power. So it runs straight off of PCIe, and it has DVI, it has VGA, and it has HDMI. Those are all great to have because just great to have, just in case something doesn't go right with it. Having 3 alternatives is great. Just pick yourself up a cheap GPU. You can pick yourself up like this right here, which is a GT610. It still has a DVI, HDMI, and if I had this right here in, it would have the VGA as well, but I take this out and I put it into small form factors for testing. Thermal paste, you can get yourself cheap thermal paste. I make my own thermal paste, so I'll get cheap thermal paste, some decent thermal paste, and then I'll add my own kind of mix, which is a diamond grit, which is a certain grit's a diamond grit. It's more advanced, but just get yourself some cheap thermal paste, and then you can work your way up to some more expensive thermal paste in the future, which is always great if you could be doing XOC, extreme overclocking, and putting your GPU or CPU or whatever down below -100. You're going to want to pick yourself up some decent thermal paste. For operating system like a hard drive, SSD, NVMe, it all depends on your budget, and that hard drives are great. In my opinion, I would always run a SSD because it's just quicker boot up times, less waiting around, doing benchmarks and that. If you can get your benchmark to run faster into the next benchmark process, it will be beneficial for you because it'll be a overall it'll be an overall easier way to tell that everything's stable on that run, basically. And SSD is good to have because, well, it's faster than hard drive, basically. But if you really wanted to, you can get yourself a hard drive and put your operating system on that. Let me know in the comment section below if you'd like me to make a video on making your own bootable Windows device from like a Windows 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You can leave me a comment in the comment section below, and I will if I get enough likes, comments, I will make a video on making your own Windows, and then put it on like an SSD, or even just run it straight from the USB. You don't need to have a secondary monitor, but I like to have a secondary monitor. This right here is cheap, as like $30 or $35, something like that, on sale. Amazon 7-inch 1080p 60 Hz monitor. It's a great little monitor. I did mod it. It's all modded up. I took it apart and that, and I'm gonna be taking it apart again and making this even better. But yeah, you don't need to get yourself a monitor, but you can get yourself one. For cooling for your CPU, you can just start off with the stock cooler. The stock coolers on them are actually pretty good. And just for learning overclocking a little bit and learning your temperatures and voltages, and then also learning your RAM. RAM's gonna take you a while, so just the cheap $20 cooler. I think they're about $20 for the coolers for them. You can pick yourself up a cooler and it's just $20. Or if you want to go out and buy like a used 120 240 mil AIO, also great to use. I've had this one here for 6 or 7 years now, and it's hasn't failed me. Cools everything I throw at it and works great. Runs just right off of your normal CPU fan header. Uh, Power supply, you're gonna want a decent power supply. Don't cheap out. If you can get yourself a 1,000 watt uh, power supply right off the bat for cheap, just pick yourself up a used 1,000 watt. You should be able to find it for like 60 or 70 bucks used, and that's all you'll need for a power supply. Just don't cheap out on the power supply because you can put a lot of power into these CPUs or any CPU when you overclock. So if you have a decent power supply, you won't have to worry about um, it just shutting down basically out of the blue. Keyboard, and you gotta want an older keyboard. Do not go with like a new keyboard. Trying to find like an old, even like the oldest, just crappiest keyboard for like $2. Grab it. It'll work for every motherboard to get into the BIOS, especially if you go into like DDR2 style, back into the old Pentium old stuff. You will need an old keyboard because it's the only way you're gonna get into the BIOS. That's the only way you're gonna be able to overclock your stuff. Uh, for components and that, you're gonna want, your SATA cable and all that, which should come with a hard drive and that too. If you do get one, it should come with it. Again, get your cheap mouse as well. It doesn't have to be expensive mouse. Cables and that, you don't really need a whole lot for cables. You can just get your HDMI type cable here, like what you normally use, your HDMI cable. And then you can just get, they're called gender changers, which I have over here. So like Windows, you can buy Windows keys. You can be like silly people and spend hundreds of dollars on the Windows, like actual Windows and Windows keys, or we can put it on like a USB, just some sort of USB. You gotta want like a 16 gigabyte or more USB. You could just put like a Windows bootable on USB, and then like this one here has RAID on it, but we do that. For the cords and that, like I said, you could just go off of HDMI and just get yourself these gender changers, which are very cheap, which will be HDMI to DVI, which DVI, like I said, all these here will have DVI, VGA, HDMI if you go after these kind of graphics cards. And they're cheap graphics cards. You can pick these up for about $25, $30. And then you'll just have this one right here to use for just your overclocking on everything. It's more like a reference card for everything you do. And then the gender changes just to go from HDMI to whatever, just in case it's not working on HDMI, because that can be a thing. Other things that we can figure out for beginners here, there's not a whole lot, more or less it's what your budget is. We don't need to go right off the bat and get yourself a D5 pump, a 360 mil radiator, and a CPU cooler, a GPU cooler. You don't need to do that. You don't need to spend $1,000 on the cooling right off the bat. If you want to just get into it, pick yourself up this whole little system here with the RAM, CPU, motherboard, and cooler. You could pick up for like $150 for this whole kind of setup. And then you can grab yourself an SSD for like 20 bucks. Pick up yourself some thermal paste for 20 bucks. Um, Pick yourself up power supply, like I said, for $70 to $100. Don't cheap out on your power supply. And then CPUs, you can go through all these CPUs. These are all about $10 to $20 per CPU, so it's not too bad to get into and to do different kinds. Each CPUs could be different to overclock, so you have to take your time on each CPU. Overclocking the RAM could be different on each CPU as well, so you can take your time on that. And then to beat the scores on hardwarebot.org, you can practice and practice on these cheaper ones, and you can still go against people that have these insane records, and you can try to beat their records, which have maybe been put on for 20 years now. You never know, and no one's beat it. Maybe you can beat it. It's up to you to find out. Anyways, let me know in the comment section below if there's anything I missed for beginner overclockers. Again, this is just for cheap beginner overclockers. You can get this whole kind of setup for less than $300 and be good to go for a while, for a long time, because there's a lot of knowledge you're gonna have to learn once you get this, when you get the PC parts. This could be a lot to learn, especially RAM. RAM has so many different kind of timings, and it, so much performance can be made just by tuning your RAM. A lot of performance can be made just by tuning your CPU. Having a cheap platform to begin with is great. Let me know in the comment section below if this beginner helped you out. I will be making a more intermediate type video about overclocking, where we'll be going over a bit more higher end um, systems that you can look into, see if they're in your budget for your range as well. But for beginners, this is a great system, the LGA 1366. You could go to the also older. I've not used this one in a while. This is LGA 1150, I believe, and this is the Z97 Pro Wi-Fi, and this is by Asus. This will run your i7 4770Ks, 4790Ks, i5 4560Ks, those type CPUs. You can pick up these kind of boards for about $120. A lot of times they don't come with, as you can see, doesn't come with any of the PCIe on it, and that you'll find them like that sometimes. You can also go with like the i7 3770Ks and go off with those too, but they're about the same price as well. Even though these older boards and that not a lot of people want them anymore, it's people want them now because they're great overclocking, and there's still a lot of records to be broken, so people want these boards. So if you can find one for less than $100, pick it up, try it out. Lots and lots of CPUs can be put into them and tried out, so let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. And as always, don't forget to get her done.